Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour à tous. Ravie de vous accueillir pour cette 12e édition de Novatech. Je suis Elodie Brelot, je suis directrice du Graie et secrétaire générale des conférences Novatech. Novatech est organisée à Lyon depuis 1992 avec une fréquence de 3 ans. En 1992, c'est le comité joint de l'IWA-IHR et l'association Eurydice qui en était à l'origine avec Bernard Chocat et en appui sur le Graie. J'ai eu le plaisir d'assister à la première édition et organiser les 11 suivantes. C'est donc toujours un énorme plaisir de vous accueillir pour cet événement. Afin de m'accompagner dans cette ouverture, j'ai fait appel à 2 partenaires essentiels et 2 acteurs fondamentaux de la gestion de l'eau sur nos territoires, à savoir la Métropole de Lyon et l'agence de l'eau Rhône Méditerranée Corse. Et donc, je vais demander à Pierre Commenville, directeur du cycle de l'eau à la Métropole, de vous accueillir sur son territoire et d'ouvrir cette conférence avec moi. Merci Pierre.
Bonjour à toutes et tous. Bienvenue à Lyon. Bienvenue sur le territoire de la Métropole de Lyon. J'ai le grand honneur de vous accueillir ici dans cette ville au nom de la présidente de la Métropole de Lyon, Véronique Sarcelli, et de la vice-présidente en charge de l'eau qui s'appelle Laurence Croisier. Laurence Croisier, elle sera peut-être avec nous dans la journée, vous aurez l'occasion de la voir. On est évidemment très heureux, mais j'allais dire comme à chaque édition, de pouvoir vous accueillir ici sur le territoire de la Métropole. Ça fait 40 ans qu'on était membre cofondateur du Graie. Quelques années plus tard, on a mis en place l'OTU, un observatoire plus technique sur l'hydrologie urbaine. On a accumulé beaucoup de données, beaucoup de connaissances, et on a accompagné le chemin que vous toutes et tous vous avez emprunté vers la gestion intégrée des eaux pluviales et vers davantage de résilience dans nos villes. Donc je voulais vous dire à quel point je vous remercie, je suis fier de pouvoir vous accueillir ici à Lyon. Vous êtes très nombreux, ça a déjà commencé hier, une très belle édition. Je voulais aussi remercier les partenaires financiers, les mécènes, les associations partenaires, la presse d'être là pour couvrir l'événement. On est sur un séminaire, un colloque qui aujourd'hui est mature. Et donc, dans sa maturité, il a un réseau de partenaires qui viennent prolonger son message entre 2 éditions. Le territoire de la métropole, vous allez le découvrir pour certains, le retrouver pour d'autres. Vous savez que c'est un territoire dans lequel on a mis beaucoup d'énergie à travers ce qu'on a baptisé, ce qu'on a brandé la ville perméable, avec des bonnes idées prises à Novatech. C'est une stratégie qui s'est traduite par une très forte transmission des données, des acquis, des expériences. On s'est attaché à mettre de l'énergie, à transmettre. Et donc, j'espère que vous en verrez les fruits. En tout cas, c'est notre attente ici à la Métropole de Lyon. J'ai à peu près 50 agents de ma direction qui sont inscrits tout au long du colloque. Il faudra que vous cherchiez sur les badges pour voir s'ils sont de la Métropole de Lyon. Et je vous en prie, dites-leur ce que vous pensez de ce que vous allez voir, de ce que vous allez entendre. Pour nous, c'est une chance incroyable d'avoir un miroir aussi précis, aussi acute du retour de nos réalisations, de ce qu'on peut faire, de nos perspectives. C'est particulièrement important parce que la métropole, c'est une collectivité et on vient d'alterner, de changer les élus de cette collectivité. On repart pour une période de 6 ans et donc en ce début de mandature, c'est important de pouvoir convoyer les meilleures idées possibles. Voilà, je vous souhaite un excellent colloque et je vous remercie encore infiniment de votre présence ici à Lyon. Tout bien ?
Nicolas Mourlon. J'ai oublié la diapo, mais là c'est marrant.
Bonjour à toutes et tous. Je suis Nicolas Mourlon. le directeur de l'agence de l'eau Rhône Méditerranée Corse. Alors, agence de l'eau, agence, eau, ça a l'air de mots simples à coller comme ça. Je pense que dans la plupart des pays dont vous venez, ça ne revêt pas la même réalité. Donc, je vais d'abord expliquer et à vous dire ce qu'est une agence de l'eau. L'agence de l'eau en France, ce sont des organismes qui ont été créés en 1964 et qui ont une vocation qui est de prélever un impôt sur tous les usages de l'eau. Et avec cet impôt, on appelle redevance, on finance des projets qui vont dans le sens d'une meilleure gestion de l'eau. Projets qui vont dans le sens d'une meilleure gestion de l'eau, qui vont être en agriculture ou dans les villes ou dans tout secteur qui est concerné par la question de l'eau. Et je disais, on a été créé en 1964, à une époque où, en France, on se disait que peut-être si on n'y prend pas garde, si on ne prend pas soin de nos rivières, notamment en termes de qualité, on finira par manquer d'eau alors qu'on en a. Et c'était le sens de cette loi en 1964 qui a fait qu'en France, on est passé de à peu près 200 systèmes d'épuration à peu près 22 000 en l'espace d'une quelques décennies, qui aujourd'hui, et qui jusque dans les années 90-2010, nous faisait dire que voilà, on avait pris soin des rivières, et notamment au milieu urbain, on avait fait le plus gros. Aujourd'hui, on se rend compte qu'on a encore un certain nombre de sujets qui sont devant nous et auxquels on est confronté et sur lesquels vous travaillez, chère Elodie, avec vos équipes, avec les différents partenaires du Graie depuis maintenant plusieurs années. On est confronté encore à des sujets en milieu urbain qui, plutôt, je vais revenir sur les sujets sur lesquels aujourd'hui en milieu urbain on est confronté. Alors, on avait fait une grande partie avec nos systèmes d'épuration. Maintenant, on a un sujet qui est le changement climatique va induire une accélération. Alors, j'espère qu'on saura traduire tout ça, une accélération du grand cycle de l'eau. Globalement, on a plus d'eau par à-coup et on en manque plus longtemps. Et en plus, il fait plus chaud. Voilà. Bon, ça, c'est un autre sujet. On a un sujet autour de ce point-là qui devient très important. On a un deuxième sujet qui est l'impact de nos activités induit un certain nombre de pollutions dont on donne l'impression que chaque jour, on en découvre une nouvelle et que chaque jour, on en découvre une pire. C'est un sujet très important dans nos territoires. Et puis, on a un autre sujet qui est, alors, on va le dire trivialement, on manque d'argent. En tout cas, on se dit qu'on n'aura pas les modèles financiers qui nous permettront de faire tout ce qu'on a envie de faire. Aucun de ces sujets n'est spécifique à la France, évidemment. Et aucun de ces sujets n'est plus fort en France que dans tout un tas d'autres pays. Enfin, je le vivais bien plus fortement dans plein de pays. C'est une réalité. On n'a pas l'apanage de ces difficultés. Mais on a ces difficultés aujourd'hui et on a plusieurs chemins possibles. Mercredi et jeudi dernier, j'étais avec des parlementaires, des députés, des sénateurs, pour évoquer les sujets de partage de l'eau et les sujets globaux de gestion de l'eau qui nous touchent aujourd'hui dans les territoires. Hier, j'étais à la Fédération des pêcheurs. Les pêcheurs sont organisés par département aux fédérations autour des sujets d'eau. Pourquoi je parle de ces deux sujets ? Dans toutes ces réunions auxquelles je participe aujourd'hui, tout le monde a très conscience qu'on a des gros sujets autour de l'eau, du partage de l'eau dans les prochaines années et des impacts des activités humaines sur le partage de l'eau. Et on a deux chemins possibles. On a un chemin qui consiste à faire monter une forme de conflictualité, faire monter des conflits. Certains auront plus le droit à l'eau que d'autres. Certains auront plus raison de l'utiliser que d'autres. On a ce récit-là qui est en train de se construire dans certains territoires. Et puis on a un autre récit qui est comment on construit dans les territoires un autre rapport à l'eau, comment on la réintègre dans nos villes, comment on en fait un allié dans nos villes, comment on en fait un allié pour nos différentes utilisations et comment on reconstitue ce récit. Moi, je suis toujours frappé. Vous avez peut-être étudié, alors certains sont évidemment français, et d'autres viennent d'autres territoires. Si vous étudiez la France, vous avez 70 départements, 66 je crois, qui portent le nom de leur rivière. Le récit de la France s'est fait autour de l'eau. On l'a un peu oublié et tout, mais on a ce chemin de reconstituer un récit autour de l'eau, ce que fait en particulier la métropole, dont je salue le travail depuis plusieurs années. Et donc on a ces deux chemins possibles. Évidemment, moi, en tant que fonctionnaire, patron de l'agence de l'eau, j'en ai un que je privilégie et que je souhaite voir venir et sur lequel nous apportons notre aide. Nous apportons notre aide au travers des projets que nous finançons. Ce type d'événement, Elodie, c'est ce type d'événement qui va nous aider. Parce qu'il va nous aider à croiser des regards, à bâtir aussi des chemins, à se nourrir d'expériences d'autres pays, d'autres territoires, et à monter aussi des travaux de recherche pour faire ce dont nous avons besoin. C'est 1, ralentir le cycle de l'eau, 2, arriver à donner confiance aux habitants sur notre capacité à maîtriser les pollutions. Il s'agit bien de confiance et montrer qu'on est capable de créer cette confiance-là. Et 3, trouver des solutions, j'allais dire, qui financièrement sont soutenables par les collectivités à moyen et à long terme. On a vraiment besoin de ce travail-là. Et donc, moi, j'ai regardé le programme, je voudrais rester avec vous tout le temps, mais je lirai quand même les résultats, je ne pourrais pas rester. Et c'est une initiative, donc je crois que c'est le 12e, c'est ça ? C'est le 12e, c'est une initiative, vous avez vraiment eu le nez creux, je veux dire, et je suis très heureux qu'on en soit partenaire. Je salue mes collaborateurs qui sont présents, Hélène, Fabien, il y a Camille qui nous a aidés aussi à préparer, d'en être les partenaires et de continuer à vous soutenir dans ce projet. Donc un grand merci, je souhaite des travaux riches, des échanges importants, et puis surtout continuer à nous nourrir et à nourrir tous les récits qu'on va pouvoir construire autour de l'eau en ville, autour de ces endroits où nous vivons, et on en a grand besoin. Merci beaucoup.
Merci à tous les deux pour cette ouverture et le repositionnement de cette question de la gestion des eaux pluviales en ville dans nos enjeux globaux, j'allais dire même planétaires, de gestion de l'eau de manière générale. Pour celles et ceux qui ne nous connaîtraient pas, je prends 2 minutes pour vous présenter le Graie, une association scientifique et technique qui a été créée il y a 40 ans, avec pour ambition de rassembler les scientifiques et les professionnels dans les domaines de la gestion de l'eau dans l'aménagement. De fait, depuis 40 ans, nos modalités d'action portent d'abord sur l'animation, la coordination de dispositifs de recherche. Pierre et Nicolas d'ailleurs parlaient de l'OTU, l'Observatoire de terrain en hydrologie urbaine, dispositif de recherche ancré sur la métropole de Lyon, sur la base desquels on produit des programmes de recherche pluridisciplinaires, travailler avec les acteurs opérationnels, et on essaye d'aller jusqu'à la valorisation des résultats produits. Notre deuxième levier d'action, c'est l'animation technique. Et ce sont plutôt des groupes de travail avec des agents des collectivités, des bureaux d'études, des partenaires institutionnels qui viennent confronter leurs expériences et qui, sur la base de ça, produisent des retours d'expérience, mais aussi des recommandations d'un point de vue technique, organisationnel ou réglementaire. Et je dis toujours que ces deux dynamique d'animation, c'est en fait la base de connaissances, la base de production de connaissances du Graie. Et à partir de là, on fait de la diffusion des connaissances, mais aussi on va jusqu'à essayer de faciliter et d'accompagner l'appropriation de ces connaissances par les acteurs opérationnels et par les décideurs. Donc au-delà de conférences, on fait aussi des journées de sensibilisation, des visites techniques, des ateliers, des formations, pour essayer de faire en sorte que l'on massifie la bonne gestion des eaux pluviales. Du coup, Novatech est vraiment représentatif de notre action, puisque, effectivement, vous êtes plus de 630 à vous rassembler aujourd'hui. On a une répartition assez exemplaire entre les scientifiques, les acteurs des collectivités locales et les entreprises qui viennent apporter des solutions. Dans le programme aussi, vous le verrez, parmi les 240 communications, il y a une répartition entre des communications scientifiques, mais aussi des expériences, des retours d'expérience qui sont venus pour partager ce travail-là. Alors, la spécificité de Novatech, c'est quand même d'être centré sur la gestion des eaux pluviales à la source. Et donc, il y a une bonne partie de la conférence qui est centrée sur, alors chacun a son vocabulaire, solutions à la source, mais beaucoup les solutions fondées sur la nature pour améliorer la compréhension du fonctionnement des systèmes, notamment le triptyque eau, sol, végétal, et d'améliorer leur gestion, leur exploitation et leur entretien. On a un volet plutôt à l'échelle du bassin versant et des systèmes d'assainissement dans leur globalité, puisqu'il y a un enjeu à bien comprendre l'effet ou l'efficacité de nos gestions diffuses, nos solutions diffuses sur le fonctionnement global du système, notamment face aujourd'hui aux événements extrêmes et au changement climatique. Un troisième volet qui est sur la gouvernance et l'organisation, parce que des sujets aussi transversaux nécessitent une modification de la façon dont on gère les politiques publiques et dans la façon dont on positionne l'eau dans l'ensemble des stratégies de gestion du territoire. Et puis un quatrième volet qui me tient particulièrement à cœur et qui prend de l'ampleur cette année, c'est le transfert de connaissances. Comment, au-delà de mieux connaître, on fait en sorte de transmettre ces connaissances, de les faire évoluer ensemble et de développer ces stratégies sur les territoires. Et c'est une réflexion en soi parce qu'on le voit, ça ne se fait pas tout seul. Une des clés que l'on partage et que l'on identifie régulièrement sur la gestion des eaux pluviales, c'est la nécessité de travailler main dans la main avec les acteurs de l'aménagement, avec les acteurs de l'urbanisme et la planification urbaine, les architectes et les paysagistes, parce qu'on ne gère pas l'eau seule, mais on la gère bien comme un élément du paysage, de la structuration de la ville. Et c'est vraiment en travaillant ensemble avec les compétences des uns et des autres qu'on arrivera à développer ces solutions, à les améliorer. Et malgré tout, nous sommes ici une majorité d'acteurs de l'eau parce que nous sommes portés par cette thématique de l'eau. Du coup, depuis la création du Graie, depuis le développement de Novatech, on fait des partenariats pour essayer de séduire les acteurs du paysage, de l'urbanisme, de l'aménagement, pour qu'ils viennent partager avec nous ces compétences. Donc des partenariats avec les organismes. Au travers des trophées Thierry Métro, on appelle les acteurs de l'aménagement à venir nous expliquer quelle est la part de l'eau dans leur projet et comment ils conçoivent l'eau dans leur projet. Et puis, pour la conférence d'ouverture, on a voulu marquer cette dimension du lien entre eau, ville et paysage. Notre premier conférencier s'appelle Rhys Coleman. Il est directeur de la recherche à Melbourne Water. Depuis une trentaine d'années, il coordonne et il facilite la réalisation de programmes de recherche en relation avec les acteurs du territoire pour faire évoluer les pratiques. Je crois qu'on fait à peu près le même métier, à l'autre bout du monde, pas forcément à la même échelle, entre le Graie et Melbourne Water. Et c'était un des intervenants qui allait porter finalement ce message de transfert. Et comme c'est un très bon orateur, en plus, je vais lui laisser le soin d'animer la conférence de ce matin. Voilà pour mon introduction. Et puis, je vous souhaite une très belle journée, une très belle session. Et puis, je vais appeler Rhys à me rejoindre. Merci.
Merci, Elodie.
Je t'en prie.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. This is my first Novatech, so it's going to be my best Novatech. But before I start, I'd just like to thank Elodie, Tim, and Fred, and the other organisers of Novatech for inviting me here to speak to you. It's a real honour to be able to come from Australia and talk to an audience like yourselves. And I really look forward to learning from everyone over the next few days. The opening session that we're going to share with you is all about water and nature shaping our cities of the future. So the purpose really is to not to say what your vision should be for the future, that's your vision, but to inspire ideas that might make you think about how some of these ideas that we talk about today could relate to you and your cities of the future. So Elodie already introduced us, so I probably don't have to say too much, but there's three speakers, so myself, Peter Bach and Kotchakorn Voraakhom. So Peter's from Switzerland and Kotchakorn's from Thailand, and I'm from Australia. We're different in our backgrounds. I'm an ecologist and Peter's an engineer, and Kotchakorn's a landscape architect. And I must admit, Peter and Kotchakorn have an amazing bio, so I really encourage you to read the bios in full. I can't say them all because I only have 10 minutes, but a couple of amazing speakers, and it's a real honour to be able to introduce them. Peter is an engineer that works with spatial planning tools. He owns his own company, Eden CT. He runs a podcast, The Grand Challenges, that he's very proud of, talking about urban water management and other issues. And you've also worked in Australia too, Peter, haven't you? And Kotchakorn from Thailand. Wow, what a bio, amazing. So if you want to see some pretty cool projects, and some of those you'll hear about today, but Kotchakorn's done some amazing things and got some really great international recognition, and Time Magazine 100 list for some of the world's most influential people. That's Kotchakorn, and you're going to hear from her. So I suggest that if you're ever feeling a little bit down about the progress of urban water management, have a look at Kotchakorn's bio and what she's done, and I think it'll make you feel a little better. So the purpose of the session is that we want to try to construct a vision for urban water management of the future. Your vision, not our vision. And really we want to, what could it look like? What could this vision look like at a regional scale, at a precinct scale, at a site scale? So thinking about all those different levels of planning that would inspire you to think about what it means for your vision. So we're from 3 different professional backgrounds that I've mentioned, different geographical settings, and of course different planning scales. So the way that this session will work is I'll just say a few words and then you'll hear from Peter and Koch, and then we'll come back to some questions that the organising team have prepared, and we'll go through those questions. This is news in Australia. As I was flying from Australia to France to be at this conference, here's some news articles in the Australian news, and I thought, wow, there's no better time and place to be talking about water in our cities and the roles that water can play in terms of livability in our cities and the way we're managing it. So very good timing, Elodie and team, for organising it now. A little bit about me. So Tim said, you should tell people what inspires you, Rhys. And these are the images that I came up with. So I grew up around beaches and rivers like these, and I've always done water sports. I've loved water. I swim, I sail, I surf. I just love being in the water. It's my happy place. I also really love nature and being around nature, and I find that for me, the way I feel is often connected to the nature that I see. So if I'm in an area where it's just all concrete buildings, my mood will drop. But if I'm out in nature and I see dolphins, I see eagles, all these sorts of wonderful animals, my mood goes up very high. So to me, I'm very connected to nature. So it's no surprise that I grew up to be a freshwater ecologist, which I love doing. And a couple of pictures here. So this is a little fish, the dwarf Galaxius. That was my PhD, was on conservation of that little fish. And also more recently, I've been doing work on platypus and absolutely love it. And that's with Tim and others. And so I'm very lucky that I get to do some great research in areas that I love. So why has the organising committee asked this guy from Australia to come and talk to you about urban water management? We're up here somewhere, right? Up here, and there's Melbourne all the way there underneath. It's kind of dark, yeah. That's where we are. And our rivers look like this, and our animals look like that. So you might be thinking, well, what's Australia got to do with France or some of the other countries that you come from? And I think actually when it comes to urban water management, there's a lot of similarities. Yeah, our cities might be different, but there's also a lot of similarities between the issues we're struggling with. And I heard some of those before. We're worried about climate change. We're worried about warming and drying in our cities. We're worried about more intense storm events that will cause flooding risks. And is our infrastructure going to be able to cope? We're worried about a growing city, and is there going to be enough water for that city? And what alternative sources of water can we look for? We want to cool our cities through urban greening. We want to protect and improve biodiversity in our cities, and we want them to be a place that's a nice place to live. So I think we can learn a lot from each other is what I'm trying to say. Melbourne Water, so this is where I work. I'll just try to keep this really brief, but I guess the most interesting thing about perhaps Melbourne Water is the way that we're structured, and I'm not sure that there are many water utilities around the world that are quite like this. So we have our drinking water supplies that we manage, so water supply for Melbourne. Most of that, it comes from forested catchments that are protected. Nobody goes into those catchments. So we don't have to treat our water much at all, which is really great. We then do the bulk sewage treatment at a couple of major plants that then discharge into a local bay after the treatment. We manage flooding and drainage for the city of Melbourne. And then, thank goodness, we look after rivers and creeks and catchments, and that's the part I love. So we've got 25,000 kilometres of waterways that we protect and improve. So having all of those functions integrated into one authority, I think, is a real advantage for getting things done. So here's a picture of Melbourne. Am I going right for time, Tim? Yep. Okay. So Melbourne here, this is Australia. Melbourne right down the bottom. It's very, very cold there at the moment compared to here. This is our catchment. So this sort of orangey area, that's all the urban areas, but we still have a fair bit of agriculture and forested areas in the city. So we manage all of those areas. And as I mentioned before, urban growth is a big challenge for us. So being able to provide safe and reliable water supply for Melbourne, but also as we create our cities and create more impervious surfaces, we've got a big stormwater management problem that can impact on the health of waterways. Along with climate change, yes, it's drier, it's more extreme weather events. It includes things like, for us, wildfires. I don't know how big an issue they are in France, but for us it's a big deal, particularly if we get fires in those drinking water supply catchments. It's a big deal for water quality and supply. So how do we deal with these challenges? And I've put in here very high level, broadly, the things that we feel need to be in place to make things happen for water management. So at first we need to have good policy and legislation in place that say, you should be doing these things. They give us a mandate to get money from government and to be implementing things like stormwater management. So the legislation and policy at the top is very, very important as the authorising environment. We develop strategies and plans as co-design plans with all of our stakeholders, so we agree on what are the most important things we can do together across government agencies. Champions. We need champions in the industry, and perhaps they get overlooked sometimes. It's very important, we believe in Melbourne, that there are certain people with certain roles that have influence in the industry, and we need to kind of nurture and protect and grow those individuals that can really help influence change. And finally, close to my heart, collaborative research. So invest in research that's driving our understanding about risks, opportunities, and also continuous improvement in the way we do things. So some of the things that we, I guess, are thinking about in Melbourne to kind of navigate some of our challenges. So real-time control of stormwater or drainage assets, and I noticed there's a conference theme on that, so there's a few talks about that, but that's certainly something we're very keen on, getting more out of our drainage assets by real-time monitoring levels and then making remote releases for multiple benefits, like flood protection, environmental water, household water use, doing a lot of planting along rivers to create shade and greening for the urban environments and cooling, but also for biodiversity. Large stormwater harvesting schemes, we're now investing in those. So where we feel we're not able to treat all the stormwater that we want to in new urban estates, we want to protect the waterways. We're now looking into these large-scale harvesting schemes that'll take all that excess stormwater, treat it and use it in another way, and then we can return it to the creek in the right way, the right time. And then finally, a whole lot of improved technologies around understanding waterway health. So environmental DNA, environmental DNA that's able to do biodiversity surveys, emerging contaminants of concern and being able to understand those. I think we heard about those. And things like new sensors that can help us better understand performance of our assets. So I think that's not too bad, actually. Yeah, great. So that's it for me for now. I'm going to hand over to Peter Bach, who's going to now give his perspective. So Peter will talk for 20 minutes, and then we'll hear from Kotch, and we have some questions at the end. So over to you, Peter.
Thanks a lot, Rhys, and thank you everyone for being here. It's an honor to be standing in front of so many people, so many great minds, and also many of you who have inspired me, inspired the work around what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm Peter Bach. I describe myself as a consultant, researcher, and educator, and to sum it up, I help cities embrace the power of nature so that they can build sustainable, resilient, and livable urban environments. So what that means, you're about to see. But in order to understand that, we have to start from the very beginning. And like Rhys, water has also been a very important part of my life. This is me, 6 years old, on the beach somewhere in Malaysia, a very nice island that I always went to with my parents. And already then, I was trying to build, wonderful cities. I had a budget of practically $0. I didn't have any fancy tools to build sandcastles, but I did have a stakeholder, a very important one, these hermit crabs. And so I remember as a child trying to dig holes and trying to dig tunnels to house these little critters and always having to fight against the incoming tide. But what I quickly learned was that you can work with nature to actually, create something that's quite beautiful, even if you have limited resources. But it was only until university when I then saw that this could become a real profession. And I remember this was the exact document in third-year undergraduate engineering, this exact page that made me realize, hang on, this can actually be done in real cities, and it's worth pursuing. And so fast forward many years later, I practiced that for 15 years in academia. And then I guess the real value then solidified itself around 2009, shortly before the pandemic. After losing my father, I could see that nature was there to support me, giving me a place of refuge, a place where I could collect my thoughts. And, we all know the pandemic came after that, so, that's history as well. But nature definitely taught me something there. Please don't question my cup or coffee choices. But we are facing, let's call it, a rather complicated soup of challenges in the world. Water security issues are becoming more and more obvious to us, increasing extremes of rainfall and droughts. Couple that with rising temperatures, often droughts and heat come concurrently, so it makes it even more challenging to deal with. At the same time, we are seeing massive biodiversity loss, ecological degradation from rapid urbanization, us trying to accommodate more housing and more shopping malls, call it that. And at the same time, a declining quality of life in our urban environments, because in a way, we're somehow forsaking the power of nature. And this is no surprise then when we experience heat waves like this in the last week, where we've basically, repeating the mistakes over and over again and not acting fast enough to try and adapt our cities, to try and create some more systemic change, which is really what we need. Nature-based solutions has been around for a while. Quick disclaimer, I will be throwing terms around. You probably are familiar with the alphabet soup, and I work with quite a few of them, so bear with me there. But nature-based solutions has been seen as an important way of adapting to climate change. And the good news is, if you consult the latest State of Finance for Nature reports, $220 billion of investments into nature-positive activities. I mean, just let that number sink in. It's quite nice. We're actually investing, which is great. But on the flip side, we also have a lot of investments into activities still harming nature. So I highly recommend reading the United Nations Environment Programme report, which comes out every year. It gets updated every year. And it gives us really an idea of what's going on, in the big picture. But what UNEP is now proposing is really this big turnaround. We need to be able to reduce the negative impacts and increase the positive impacts with nature. But doing that requires decision makers and investors to actually invest more money to build cities that flourish with nature, to implement these solutions, and also to be confident that they work in the long run. And this is where a lot of the work that I do comes in handy. So, water and nature, you've seen my own origin story, but we're also seeing the importance of both working hand in hand, because without water you can't sustain nature, and without nature we can't adapt to climate change and other challenges. So I would like to leave you with 3 key messages today, which I would like to illustrate. So, in the past year and a half of running my own company, a lot of these messages became very clear to me. The first one is really standing on the shoulder of greats is encouraged, but copy-paste is discouraged. What do I mean by that? This is the Eiffel Tower. I hope you recognize it. The original one in Paris. But it is also the world's most copied structure in the world, and you'll find examples everywhere, including Lego. Okay, the Lego one looks nice. I mean, it has a good purpose, but simply copying an idea, it's great, but it does not match up to the original. The Eiffel Tower itself is an engineering marvel, which combined engineering proficiency with art. And we're seeing this happen a lot in nature-based solutions. But fortunately, a lot of these can provide us inspiration. The earliest one that I always like to quote is the Garden City from Ebenezer Howard, 1898 was the initial proposal. Some publications came later. But already back then, he recognized that the connection between cities and nature was essential to actually improve the quality of life, and proposed a radical plan. It never got built, but I've seen examples since then of people taking it and building upon it, adapting it to their own local context. In today's day and age, when we think about water management in cities, the 2 biggest inspirations that I see people drawing from in academia and practice are, for one, especially in Europe, the Copenhagen Cloudburst Management Strategy, which really shows how you can work with centralized and decentralized management. We don't need to completely redesign our cities. We can adapt, and we can make it work and have spaces that are multifunctional. And the other one, of course, being the sponge cities concept in China, originally coined by Kong Jianyu in 2003 and then adopted nationally. And I think we can draw a lot of inspiration from these, and it helps us progress and move the needle. But the problem is, when you then start dealing with compliance, you run the risk of this becoming a box-ticking exercise. And then the copy and paste happens all over again, just to satisfy a legislation. This is a paper I always like to come back to, published my first PhD student. We've been tossing that back and forth in the last few days. But it really shows that in Melbourne, being one of the prime examples of where adoption has happened substantially, there is not really a spatial pattern to what we saw when we looked at how these systems are placed, and that there's still an opportunistic mindset there. Not much strategy, and often for that monofunctional purpose of satisfying water quality targets. In Europe, we're seeing similar things emerge. More recently, the 330-300 philosophy has become quite mainstream. This idea of creating livable cities by providing 3 trees in line of sight, 30% canopy cover in your neighborhoods, and 300 meters of walking distance to the nearest park, or less. It's nice to have these philosophies, but unless we think about this in a more systematic way, we will again run the risk of just trying to satisfy it and planting trees just for the sake of planting trees. For the record, if you don't plant trees properly, they can interfere with wind flows. They can cause an increase in allergies. So there are some negative consequences. Now with the nature restoration law, we are fortunately able to then take on this challenge again and hopefully do this in a more systematic way. So the time is right. So this is where planning support comes in. And in my own work, this is what I've been working on in research for quite some time, I've been trying to figure out how can we help decision makers really become more confident and approach the problem in a more strategic way. We have plenty of design guides, plenty of engineering manuals that help us design these systems, almost too much to read in a week. And at the same time, over the last decade, we've seen the emergence of so many different planning support tools, and these are just the ones with logos and names. There's plenty others. And if you read any scientific collection of literature, you'll see even more attempts. The problem is, many of these models are designed for a specific purpose. They're quite powerful. They're very good in detailed design or for looking at one specific aspect. The guides are the same. You can find climate-sensitive design guides. You can find water-sensitive design guides. We have the knowledge, but what we don't have is consistency and a full analytical approach to tackling the problem. And if we have that full analytical pipeline from the beginning, then we can at least begin to understand the complex interconnections between planning nature, managing water, heat, amenity, and biodiversity, and making sure that our design goes from the initial intended purpose to the final performance. And this is what I was recently working on in a project together with University of Leiden and Wageningen, where we tried to tackle this model development question one more time, and this time across the entire cycle. So this model itself we developed to really help municipalities understand what the options are for nature-based solutions, how these options might change if you have certain kinds of priorities, and basically it is a spatial planning model that allows you to bring in a lot of the data that we already have. It allows you to then understand, well, what is important to me in my development? Is it water? Is it heat? Is it amenity? Biodiversity? So using multi-criteria spatial analysis, it can create maps where you can understand the spatial interconnections, how population and potential hazards relate, whether it's heat, whether it's water, whether it's pollution or vegetation cover, and then prioritize which regions in our city need to actually adopt nature-based solutions and what kinds. So for example, in the priority map, you can start to identify certain districts where it's really needed, or you can focus on a particular district of your choice. And it's a fast model because it allows you to really scan what are the options so that you save time for the creative dialogue, looking at 15 different nature-based solutions types across key considerations. The fact that we need multifunctional systems and we need to make sure that the costs are adequate. It plans these systems at a parcel level and ultimately gives people the option to explore what can we actually do in our development. Is it rainwater harvesting? What about street trees? What about green facades? Right there, for example, although they're quite expensive, but beautiful. Or, swale systems. And so really marrying the urban form with possible urban nature-based solutions, and also especially providing transparency of how many combinations there are, how complex it is, and ultimately what actually suits given your priorities and purposes. So the model itself is there to support and give that initial insight, providing suitability maps and especially at the end, the performance data that we need. Because it's one thing putting nature in, but it's another understanding how does it change runoff coefficients, for example, which influence stormwater volumes. How does it modify surface temperatures as a result of putting in more green? What about amenity, that 3-30-300 principle? We are increasing the vegetation cover. And what about biodiversity? We are increasing the complexity of the vegetation within the model. And so reporting this, providing this as a dashboard, having the data, the evidence base available so that you can make better decisions. This is something that I felt has been missing and something we have tried to address, because with the evidence, you can actually help create more confidence, whether it's performance, whether it's cost. And this brings me to my second message, and it's really that nature's core benefits are invisible unless you quantify them. And this is a particular project that has been very interesting to work on, this concept of regenerative urbanism, where we try to revitalize degraded urban environments. So I went in with a team into this particular region, which is in Thun, north. They're trying to build a new city center there with a new railway line planned and a station. It's a former military industrial complex where they were manufacturing a lot of ammunition and other kinds of technology for the Swiss military. And you can see just from the environment, it's quite harsh. There's a lot of monolithic blocks, and nature seems to be relegated to a lot of the peripheries. And so You know, when you're dealing with this and a whole range of stakeholders, including 2 major military companies in Switzerland, you have to take a fairly careful and radical approach. So we fortunately had a lot of data available that allowed us to begin understanding what the site looks like, whether it's the hydrology and the groundwater protection zones. We also had information about the heat and the vegetation, and you can see there are some pretty red patches there because it is very impervious. But where the real value started coming in was when we looked at the dynamics of the site. How is it behaving? And this is where the power of using multiple models, rather than a single model of everything, combining multiple disciplines and domains into an integrated picture gives you a lot of value. So we began by diagnosing the site and looking at it also from a regional perspective, because water doesn't necessarily respect site boundaries. And we then created a diagnosis chart. And this map, it looks complicated, but it really shows you the combination of water, heat, and biodiversity. The darker the blue, the more water. The darker the green, the more animals are moving through the environment. And the darker the red, which gets a bit muddled out by the rest of the colors, the hotter it is. And this itself became the basis for lots of dialogue with the team members and with the architects. And these are the actual original scribbles of us trying to figure out the site. And we were triangulating it with other data sets, such as the legacy issues on the site, pollution. And that ultimately led to a design that it was quite radical in the end, because we said it's a city center, but we're not adopting a city center approach. We're adopting a polycentric approach. And we ended up dividing the site into 4 different areas, supported by a lot of the modeling and analysis. There's the market, where we removed existing buildings because this was a low point in the drainage. We used flood modeling to show that you need to actually create that open space there. Fortunately, being close to the train station also lent itself as a good amenity space for people to gather, hence the name market. Campus, high-tech campus being developed on the site, originally proposed at the waterfront, which we said this is a no-go because people love the waterfront in Switzerland. It's blasphemy if you don't. So we moved that inwards, but created long corridors to help with the urban heat management and the amenity. And where this campus was originally supposed to be, that big green patch on the waterfront, we revitalized into a biodiversity and amenity space, allowing people to then really utilize the green corridor that you can see here to get to and from the city center from the peripheries. And this was also supported on a biodiversity level, because when we did the connectivity modeling of the final result, we could also see we were creating new movement pathways for animals. And this was not done in isolation. This was a workshop process. It was 3 workshops on this particular topic and 2 additional ones on mobility, where we had all the stakeholders in a room around the model with the data at hand, whether it's drawings, whether it's the numerical data, and we had hours and hours of deliberation with them, showing them what was important about the site, how to understand the site. And ultimately, we ended up also convincing them to revisit their idea of this campus on the waterfront, because they actually understood the importance of certain aspects of the site, showing them that there are other solutions that are possible. So really a success story that, in a way, you can savor the importance of stakeholder engagement, of good evidence that ultimately leads to a good outcome. And this is really now the 3rd message that I have. We spent decades building blue-green infrastructures. It's time to start practicing blue-green intelligence. And what do I mean by that? When you think, how do you mitigate floods with blue-green infrastructures? Well, retention pond, tanks, detention basins. Well, I say otherwise. Let's not focus on the tech, but focus on deconstructing the mechanisms. And this chart has stayed with me since undergrad. And I think I owe this to Tim, because he initially presented this chart. But it really shows you the impact of urbanization and what happens. We often say the purpose of sponge cities or any of these practices is to restore the natural catchment hydrology. But what does that actually mean? And you can see here from this chart, go from the high, peaky discharges to the more attenuated and slow kind of behavior. We talk about slow food, slow growth, slow everything. I think it's just as well the same with slow cities. But ultimately, rule number 1, which people forget, is water flows downhill. And so if water flows downhill, and we're going to focus on flooding here, then rule number 2 is work with rule number 1. So how do you stop it? How do you guide it? And many of our systems can do this, but we need to go back to first principles. You can put a barrier in the way, so water finds its way around, but it takes time. You can convey it, so you can guide it where you need it to be so that you avoid damage somewhere else. You can do retention, store it, try and keep it there as long as possible until it overflows. Or you can do detention, store it and release it slowly, trying to mimic the natural cycle. And if you have trees, we always talk about multifunctionality, maybe they can help as well, intercept. And this, in a way, takes me full circle from the previous Novatech. So previously on Novatech, I actually presented a project that I did in Bern. It's called the Vierveld-Mittelveld development. And we did a lot of modeling to understand the different aspects. Well, clearly I did something good because they called me back to guide them a bit further, in particular on urban flooding. So this is a development in Switzerland, greenfield, in comparison to the previous one, quite different. Master plan developed, blue-green infrastructures in place, and now in the implementation phase, they basically said, we need to make sure that it's flood resilient. This was the initial design after the master plan proposal. The most important thing to look for is that lime green stuff. This is a garden park area where they intended to build swales and retention basins. It didn't work because it interfered with private space. We refined it. We also had one of these moments of water flowing downhill problems, which admittedly we got past very quickly. But even later designs were not working until ultimately, once the architects I was working with understood the blue-green intelligence, those mechanisms I showed you earlier, we had a design that actually worked wonders in a 30-year, a 100-year, and a 300-year storm. And there was a lot of modeling involved in this, the same model over and over again. But what we ended up doing, and you can see the final solution wasn't anything, massive and complicated. It was a giant swale, which then guided water as a cascade down into a safe space where roads, which act as emergency corridors, could guide it away. The attenuation was good enough so that the water was not going to severely impact any downstream areas. Much of it was stored on site. And this was even more amazing when we did some hazard assessment, plotting it against the UK's DEFRA framework, where we looked at flows and velocities. In fact, most of the area is green, excuse the German, but you can see it's a low risk, and only the higher risk areas were actually contained within the blue-green infrastructures. But understanding this took a while. It took a bit of iteration, but once it was understood, you could see wonders emerged. And it was not just the technologies themselves. They also worked with the terrain, which is often forgotten. It's not just about putting widgets in place, but it's understanding the site. So we know this for urban water. I've showed you these examples, but you can expand this framework to many other areas, whether it's heat or whether it's biodiversity. So change the thinking, look at the mechanisms. So in closing, some key takeaways. And this is sort of the modus operandi that I try to get people I work with to adopt. Read what nature's already doing, then decide what you want to do with it. Quantify what nature is and can do for you, then communicate it to decision makers. And then finally, borrow the thinking, not the solution. And if all else fails, adopt what I adopt as my mantra: take nature's quiet signals, ground yourself, and then build cities around health and resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. An excellent start to this session. Some really good messages there for us all, and of course, I love the messages about nature, and a foundation on evidence-based decision-making for authorities, which I really love about what you're talking about. So now it's over to Kotch, who's going to talk about her wonderful projects in Thailand. Thank you, Kotch.
Thank you, Rhys. Hi, I'm Kotch. I'm from Thailand. Yes. Anyone have been to my home nation? Okay. Thank you. It's a little bit surprise because when I get off the plane, this is the first time that I come to Europe and it's hotter than Bangkok. A bit feel like homes, but yeah, very surprised. Anyway, I'm from Delta City. It's like my land is flat. We don't have this kind of landscape, no mountain. So this is my city, Bangkok. Yes, 15 million people, 30 million visitors per year. So those of you who hasn't been, please welcome. We still have a lot of number to fill this year. So when you talk about Eden Gardens or, like those kind of like ideal landscape, this is maybe for Buddhism or for Thai people, all this. But in reality, this is my mountain, right? What is the second most consumed material on earth? Help me. Concrete, yes, perfect. Second most. And it's contribute to 37 to almost 40% of carbon emission around the world. This is how those names make you guys so hot this year. So compared to that industry, it's like the third country, the third nation that emits the most carbon. Is that fans in the charge yet? Okay. So what is the most material that we manipulate the most? Come on. Water, yes. And obviously that we use a lot of concrete to conquer the water. Yes. And what is this what really means? Ability to sustain? No. There's no such state of sustainability because we are living in change. And this is the prediction of my city in 2050. How old are you in 2050? I assume that everyone in this room would be good in mathematics. Yes. Okay. Maybe you are around 40? No. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to say the number. But this is the prediction in reality that the future is getting worse. And what is the future? Is it 100 years? No, it's 25 years from now. And this is the reality. 5 years ago, 30 minutes to the boat to get where it used to be the boundary of Bangkok. So this land used to be on ground. And we're also confronting with unexpected rain. This is very normal conditions when it's rain for like 15 minutes in Bangkok. And for IPCC report, this is the rainfall number in 5 years ago. And this is the expecting when you become 45. Yes. That means it's 30% more. How can we survive? Only that 15 minutes of rain, the whole city is kind of shut down already. And the best part is when you talk about infrastructure, whatever you do in your land, is it only content for 60 minutes, not per day, per hours, you got approved. It's very pro-development. So we rely our GDP, 1/3 of GDP of nation on this infrastructure. I'm sure some of the city, or most of the city, are actually confronting this. Whatever you think is doable or workable is no longer even answer the challenge from the past. Okay, this is the main water, the water from the north, and this is how much it was in 2011. And it has to come to my city, but we kind of get our GDP mechanisms wet. And we do this. So I think we either do this or we go for this sphere. So the infrastructure that's not working, And then in the future that we are so scared of, what about life in between? What about life in between? How many of you are engineer? Who? How many of us here are landscape architect? Hello. Yes. So we have to become resilient, thrive to survive, thrive. We either adapt or we die. I think you get this word with me, especially this summer. So when the flood comes, we very resilient. And we adapt French bulldogs, adaptive one, right? And sometimes it's not only just us, it's some other beings, right? And this is dense, not in the context of race, you know, yeah, all those little cute animals, but this is like right in the city. Same image. I think this has become now what the world perceives of you. And are you ready? Do you really ready? We are this hot, but all of our infrastructure equipped with air conditioning. But if you're asking for something very adaptive, what is the further future? And of course, when we are about to die, we need to adapt. But what is the real meaning of regenerative? What about resilience and regenerative? Like, very mixed, confused. So let's see what I, as a landscape architect, trying to do both. So in 2017, almost 9 years ago, I built the first park in 30 years. 30 years. You probably hasn't born yet. Yes. So the first park in 30 years for 15 million people city. This is crazy. It's so dense. So we are flat, so I incline the whole park to collect more water. We have a lot of rains. And equipped with rainwater tank, wetland, and retention pond that work in one system. But by inclining, it's not only just about water, but it's about people and how it's been used, because this land is 11 acres, but it costs $1 billion US. And people love to build more shopping mall. We have the best shopping mall on earth. Don't beat us. Just come and shopping for more, yes. So, and we don't have summer, winter, whatever. We only have wet and dry season. Wet feet or dry feet. So this is how the park working, when it's dry, when it's wet. And this is like maybe in the beginning, and this is 5 years later. So I show my people in such a very dense urban context that if we plan for a nature-positive city, it's actually doable in a lifetime and in 5 years. Yep, we do. This is the first street in Bangkok that doing rain gardens and things, and from that, it can also benefit to the activities. And one day, I got a call. This guy wants to come to walk the park. And I have no idea who is he. So, so I showed up, and then another 100 people, and he stand in the park, were just like running around my park. And I just like, oh, you are UN Secretary General. Yes, hi, welcome. So instead of doing Thai massage or eating mango sticky rice, he came to the park. So I'm very honored. And he also helped cleaning the water in the parks. And I think back then it's like 2008, and the nature-based solution is start to be a trend. But it's such a thing that, can you raise your hand again, landscape architects? Yeah, it's such, oh no, you're gone, okay. They left, it's only me now. Anyway, but it's such a thing that our profession has been doing, but people only perceive us as a gardener. So I told him that Bangkok is sinking faster than the sea level is rising. What does it mean? Co-benefit. This is another work finished parallelly, very close to the first project. It's the biggest urban farming rooftop in Asia. Yeah. So rather than having a very empty heat roof, you can actually use that waste space in the city, slow down the runoff 20 times, create food, public green space, and pumping the water through the renewable energy. Core benefit. If the thing that you're doing only answer one thing, that means we didn't do good enough. Working as is, city is not like blank slate, and this is how, this is the leftover infrastructure for 40 years. Let's say my generation don't even know that this thing exists. And it's built with this bridge in the promise from the government that we're gonna be the first nation in Southeast Asia to have SkyTrain. Ooh, yes, 40 years later, nothing happened. Yes, very classic in my region. So we convinced our governor to shift that whatever infrastructure that you see today might not be usable, but how can we reuse and recycle to become the first park bridge for any capital. London tried to do it, but it's not feasible. But we invest 40 years ago, so we can make it happen in the right budget. So it's become the first bridge across the river rather than the SkyTrain, but it's become for the feet. And people just love hanging out there. So next time when you're in Bangkok, please come. And healed and evolve. People call us Venice of the East. So we are very like a canal people, but this is our canals. All sewage. And when you want to do your urban heat things and you jump into the water, no, you die like right away. Not because of the heat, but because of it's so dirty. So no one even wants to think about, and this is like right downtown CBD Bangkok, which is so expensive land, but now we turn it to become with the nature because we want to think about canal more than just sewage. And then the canal department was under Department of Sewage. That's why the whole thing has turned our nature infrastructure into that. Yep. Yes. This is the first canal from 1,600 canals left to be done for blue green infrastructure. Peter, come along, please. So this is another canal. It's very historical like this, and now it's like this because it's dirty, it's not clean, and people don't want to do that anymore. So we divided land-based development from the water-based development. Now we are no longer amphibious. That's very sad. And you know, when you do that, you have homeless people, you have this kind of design, and this is historic part of Bangkok. And from doing this section of the road, maybe just that section is maybe 80 meters in width. This is how many people I have to deal with. Who is the hardest department I have to go through? Come on. Mobility? Easy. Not easy, but easy enough to convince. What? Ministry of Art and Culture. Yes, you're right. Even public work is very hard, but we can convince them from gray to become more green. But for the Ministry of Art and Culture, I'm sure it's the same story here. Yes, because they are there to say no. And yes, we need to break the silos. And how can we make the silo? The only process is like working with people. And we eventually destroy the China Wall of Bangkok down into something very simple, doable, walkable. Nothing fancy, but this is the closest how I can get my people too close to the canals once again. Seeing the movie across the canals and be part of your natural infrastructure. And this is my first time being in the canals, maybe last 2 years ago. Okay, generative governance. Do you have this kind of building in your government? Are we related? Why is all the world, the government have to look like this? And when they talk about landscape architect, this is us. Yeah, and this is Bangkok version, Thailand version. This is huge, big. Why do government need to make us feel so small? And this is the whole complex. This is our Pentagon. Ooh, scary, yes. And when we get to our government, this is the experience. No public mass transit, flood, traffic. And this is the reality of the beauty of formality of bureaucrat systems. No parking. So I got a chance to revise all this master planning. So last year the SkyTrain arrived, and this building looks so ugly. This is the ugliest building in the complex that needs some shift. And so we connect the SkyTrain so people can face the government by feet. Don't need to drive and go through all that experience. And that ugly building, we need to adapt for it to be more welcoming. This is not AI now, this is done. Yes. So we welcome people with people. We welcome people with Civic Plaza over on top of that buildings. And this is the first time our Thai government allowed to have curve. Do your government allow to have more curves? This is a question that we need to ask because, right? So we connect that and then using the parking facade to slow down the runoff, do the rain chain system and plant planter, and on the top is the urban farm rooftop with solar roof. Do what you place other to do first. And when we talk about government, you know, like our culture, we love gold. It's always on top of everything, even our new parliament. So I put gold in our drainage this time. Everything about water I want to celebrate because that's why we are from. That's how we are from. And this is the gold pipe for rain. Celebrate water. Don't hide it in the buildings. What's so ugly about water? So this time I put it as gold. This is another big guy that we need to rethink about his aesthetic. And normally it's like a phosphorus, right? You have this big, don't come near me. This is a lot of defense here. But underneath is the parking space. And when it's leak, yeah. And this is the aesthetic of the government. And you talk about nature-based solution. What does it really mean? So I shifted to an add more curve without telling them. So the whole system of this thing still circulate the water using this blue-green infrastructure and cooling the envelope of these huge buildings. And also using the reused water from cooling tower and going through all of this design with benefit of people and animals and biodiversity and health. And now we can share with them that with blue-green, not just blue, blue-green, the temperature is actually work better. And okay, another problems. This guy don't talk to this guy, and this is 8 lanes of traffic. So I'm thinking about how can the government don't talk to each other if they work together. This is not about, this is how they have to work together. So I'm thinking about, normally we do this for animals. Maybe we need to do this for government to connect, right? So it's like this. So I put all, we, not I, we put with the traffic engineer as well, put all the road down and connect that two building, which 10,000 people work on each side. Now they can walk and talk. And yes, when people connect, I put them goal. I give them goal. This is the real goal we deserve. The road, of course, I go quick. End up adding more full-time, public more green space from 5-year return period to 125 years, and temperature is much better. And yeah, a drops of rain coming from the sky to the ocean sounds very romantic and simple, right? Downhill. But in my government, in my nation, you have to pass through 50 departments. 50 plus. You want to beat us? Any nations? Right? So it's so many meanings. So I just feel that as a landscape architect, I couldn't just do a project by project. We also advocate at, this is my first COP26 in Glasgow. And world leaders stopped failing us. I skipped this, but I was in the part of the speech asking, can we fix climate change in our generation? The answer would be, I hope. The answer would be yes, yes. This only yes we can do, because the whole generation is not just us, there's further generation that also deserve to have the same experience that we're growing up, even it's not perfect, right? With crocodiles and with things, but still. So I, with my friends, also working with work with nature, low carbon adaptation technique, telling the world leaders that when you do nature-based solution, it shouldn't be on text and things. You can actually do this with other countries, global south, global north. We also have our solution, don't copy and paste. And we have coastal flooding solution, inland flooding solution, carbon solution, several things. And we also need to make our government talk to the Dutch government about water. And after them talk, we talk to the local level with the governor ourselves, using the expert, and maybe from France as well. Be very welcome for them to talk to this very engineering and putting younger generation in conversation with the leader. And communities. We are still working on how not solving Bangkok from flooding. How do I do? I have no time. Okay, I skip my videos, but it's actually a big infrastructure that I want to impose this thing as a big dam to cross the Gulf of Thailand. And it's not this and not this, but this is the sea level rise problem with the loss of settlement in one people's lifetime. So we know that only 0.0024 centimeter per second, you can slow down the sediment. But now everyone don't want to do dams. We want to be like Netherlands, like Japan, like any other country that use big infrastructure. But our ecology is so different. So yes, I think nature is the only reason to slow down for us to have that kind of sediment. But I don't know how our engineer try to propose these big things. Okay, I skipped this, but I just want us to choose wisely and not just choosing wetland, not wasteland, instead of this. Not choosing this. This is who we were, not this. And I hope that when I show this picture to my people, they really get it, that this thing will be last for the next generation. We need to maintenance and things, but you know, where is this picture coming from? New Orleans, US. So we don't want to be like US. Is that okay? Okay. So yeah, rather than finding some technology to suck the carbon down, you guys, co-benefit. This is the real future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kotch. That was a wonderful presentation and very entertaining, so thank you. But what I really liked about that presentation is when we're thinking about urban water futures, you've given us some very tangible examples of what that could be for us too. So thank you so much for that presentation. We're now going to the part of this presentation where we have some questions. A little bit tricky to put it to the audience, so the organisers decided that we would come up with some pre-questions and go through those. So, Peter, you're just going to stand there, are you, Peter? Okay. Okay. All right. So the first question. So we've heard about some successful projects from you, Kotch, the many projects in Bangkok, and Peter, you showed us some examples that came out of your modelling. I guess for someone like me who's a waterway manager, I really like to know, well, what are the ingredients for success? How did you achieve this? You know, what was in place? How did the planets align for this to happen? So maybe starting with you, Kotch, what do you think is important to be in place for these sorts of projects to happen?
I guess I couldn't work alone, even I present alone, but there's so many people behind me, including good engineer. Who not scared of me leaking the roof or, or doing all this thing. So I think the success is definitely teamwork. And of course, I making fun of government a bit, but without them, I couldn't change systematically. So I feel that there's so much hope in my own nation, even we are a third world country, but there is some champion in our sectors that we need to talk, and I hope all of the champions around France and the world are here. Yes.
And thanks, Kotch. And do you feel like, in terms of working with government, my experience back home is that it's really important to have a very clear narrative around why you need to do something. So it's a clear case to government that this is important. Was that sort of part of your strategy as well?
Definitely, we have to be very clear, and I really admire Peter's presentation. I really need his help to convince more of my government because, it just seems like you're working this direction, but for us, who doesn't have enough technology, enough expert, we're working from the other direction, but we have the same goal.
I'll let you know when I'm in Bangkok next.
Yes.
We should catch up.
Yeah. Peter, could you add to that question as well? Thanks, Kotch.
Thinking about it as I was listening to Kotch, I think it's really three things. It's openness, it's willingness to explore, and willingness to learn. I mean, that sounds very cliched, but I think the buzzwords that we have, we say alphabet soup, but I think they help drive people's, curiosities, willingness to listen to new ideas and to embrace new ideas. I think we all need some nourishment there. And when you have that, then you're willing to explore. The project in Thun that I presented, they brought in 3 teams. The workshop was having 3 parallel designs, and they learned a lot from that. But getting to that point, wanting to go slow, allowed them to then eventually learn. And I think it's the same on both the client side and the team side. The team itself, they were open to new ideas. They were open to taking on the challenge of trying to interpret my results, which I was like, I'm sorry. But I think, it's that human mindset shift, which I think is happening. It's just we need to, make it work quicker.
And do you think, Peter, that having a demonstration project is very helpful for government? Maybe a small project to show what it could look like in practice that might inspire doing similar things elsewhere? Like, do you see that as an important step in change?
Demonstration projects, definitely. But I think even just simple concepts, analogies. I mean, when you look at Kotcha's Park, that animation of the incline, I mean, it just clicks. And I think even that is already enough to get people to embrace and curious enough to wanting to try it out, you know. So I think a mix of both, because one shows you that it works on the ground, but the other one gets you to doing that in the first place.
Yeah, I think we have to be very clear when we negotiate future. And I think from my side, image or imagination helps a lot, right? But there would be one scenario before all these future alternatives with an S being selected. You have to have one alternative that if you do nothing, what is the cost of doing nothing? Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, next question. So we've talked about, this is a question around planning at different scales, that we might often have policy or legislation that says we should be doing certain things for water. But how do we ensure that these strategies and plans are translated to something that is consistent on the ground? Maybe Peter, do you want to start this time?
Well, I think before we even get to the plans, break down silos first. I think, you know, trying to encompass all the strategies and the plans doesn't work when you bring in stakeholders too late into the process. I mean, we saw this in the city of Bern. You know, when I came into the flood assessment, we then had to encounter all sorts of other issues. For example, the private space. They didn't design the private space accordingly so that water would actually be diverted out, because that was left to the stakeholders that would do that, and they will only be involved much later on. But then also, how does this fit into the overall city's plan? I mean, I think cities like to make plans and then just, you know, populate little nice projects without regard for the original plan. And I think bringing everyone in early into the process and making sure that knowledge is available and the data, I think is, before we do anything else, that is the first thing we need to do, and we're not doing that well at the moment. And I think it comes down to silos.
Right, and so involving the site-based people in the high-level planning to begin with.
Exactly, well early in the process.
Kotch?
Well, I guess I think we need to do more. And I don't have a right answer because, you know, like what I see as the citizens, of course, I have a chance to see the COP things. It's like very global things. But when it comes to the nation, between nation level, what about city level, suburban level, and down into those guys who moved their house 7 times in the same place because of the sea level rise. So I just feel like this is a whole equation. And what can I do? Maybe there's no one direction, and it's not about top down or bottom up. You need to do all. Vertically, horizontally, top down, bottom up, oh, this is a missing piece, we need to connect. So I just feel that only do more or do beyond silos, you can get things done. And it sounds very like a top-down kind of things when you present, right? But in reality, it's never this direction until I present.
It's a messy middle.
Yes, thank you.
And it sounds like, Kotch, you've been really able to break down those silos from the bottom up. And how did you...
No, I need top-down too.
Yeah.
I couldn't do only bottom-up.
Yeah.
No, and I'm not against top-down. I really need to have their cutting the ribbon, right? But I also need to carry my community with me.
Yeah.
But I just feel like we have to know what is the win-win for each of the stakeholders that we are working on. And we need to speak more simpler. Like if you show me, even me, like one in the profession of the built environment, the model, I would be like blank. But how can you show your model or water models to those who don't have enough education, but they know the nature in their blood or in their bodies? So I feel that we need to do more. We cannot just, okay, I'm only top down. No, you go bottom up. No, you go sideways. You go, you dance the whole things.
Yeah. And might the message at those different scales, it could be different, right? That what's important at the government scale in terms of a win could look different to someone, a local living in the community. So have you changed your messages at the different
I
levels?
change our messages, but with the same vision, right? If the core meanings of what we do is the same, we just need to change and shift the communication to suit in the top down. Oh, this is what you want. Okay, fine. Oh, community, okay, this is what you want. It's also in the plan. Everyone needs to compromise, but they feel like they all win. I think
Yes.
this is how we as a mediator, not activists, not only engineer or landscape architect or architect, we are mediator. Yes, this is our power. Yes.
Okay, I think we have 2 more questions. Or would you want this one or the next one, Tim? Okay. All right, I'm going to go for the next one. So, because this feels more relevant, I think. So there may be some cities around the world, so we're talking about nature-based solutions and stormwater management, but there may be some cities around the world where they're just struggling to provide safe, clean water, sanitation. Do you think that those things need to be dealt with first before we can start talking about nature-based solutions and biodiversity outcomes, or can they all be incorporated at the same time at the outset?
Peter, you want to go first, or
The water engineer
lady
going
go first, or lady choose first?
I guess we can tag team on this a bit.
Yes. Okay.
Look, I mean, water sustains life. That is pretty obvious. And if we look at how cities are built over the histories and centuries, it's always been near a clean source of water, or a source of water that they can clean. So, I mean, there is a certain order of priorities, but ultimately, when you think of nature, it works in circular fashion. We are working with the water cycle, or at least we should be, energy cycles, nutrient cycles. And I think nature-based solutions, if you can think of them in that cycle, then I think as long as you understand what your priorities are, and this doesn't just apply to safe drinking water and sanitation, it also applies to whether heat, flooding, or whatever is a priority in your zone. Go in it strategically, but keep that multifunctionality, keep that openness in mind. And in a way, I'm not advocating for cities to completely remove all our centralized systems. I think they've stood long enough to show that they can work. It's just a question of where do we need to keep expanding and where can we go decentralized and where can we be nature-inspired natural systems, or where might we need the big engineering infrastructures ultimately. It's a balancing act that I think requires delicate consideration and cyclic thinking.
Okay. So you think there's always a place for it no matter where the city's at, is what I'm hearing?
I think to a certain extent there's always a place.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Kotch, to finish off?
Totally agree with Peter that I think nature is a holistic system. And when we think that, but the problem is the question in itself that we divided into water, sanitary, sewage, pipe, or whatever. This is the problem, because when it's come to the government, they work in silo. And of course, you see my government, they don't talk, right? They don't walk to each other, really in that silo. So I don't think we really need to explain community or even us that nature is a holistic and our water is connected. But when it's come to the practice, everything has been separate. This is clean, this is dirty, this is rain, this is underground, this is royal rain, this is electricity. So I just feel that when we give meanings to the water, that's the whole problem. But of course we couldn't shift this silo tomorrow. But definitely we need to blend that boundary between silo, especially for the water governance, to work together and put it in the right place. And it doesn't mean that you have a clean water and you're not afraid of flooding, right? So I just feel that we need to be more holistic. And when your model runs and only fix one problem, think about our conversation today, please.
Great.
Indeed.
Please.
Thank you. Some excellent answers. So I think this is us now. We're finished, but we'll just leave you with this one slide for you just to think about what your water future might look like for you. And these are some of the things I guess we've talked about and heard about today. So does your water future include some of these? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pour clôturer cette ouverture, je vais faire appel à mes deux présidents, nos deux présidents, Frédéric Cherki et Tim Fletcher. Oui, vous pouvez.
Merci Elodie. Alors on était la tête dans le ciel et on a eu des super présentations très inspirantes. Avec Tim, on va faire un peu plus les aspects pratiques. On va redescendre un peu les pieds sur terre. Mais on ne va pas vous embêter longtemps. Avant de démarrer, pour information, dans le cycle des conférences qui sont organisées au sein du GICUD, du Comité joint en hydrologie urbaine, donc au niveau du Comité joint en hydrologie urbaine, l'année prochaine, la prochaine conférence, c'est l'ICUD qui va avoir lieu à Ningbo, en Chine. Et le bureau du GICUD a voté très récemment. Et la conférence ICUD prochaine, donc ce sera à Québec City en septembre 2030. On revient sur Novatech. Alors, la première chose, c'est un grand merci. Un grand merci aux membres du comité scientifique qui nous ont beaucoup aidés pour les réflexions sur les thèmes, qui nous ont beaucoup aidés aussi sur la construction du programme. On a eu, comme vous le savez, beaucoup de communication cette année. Et il a fallu gérer pour pouvoir accueillir le maximum de personnes. Et on a été beaucoup aidé par le comité scientifique, notamment sur ces aspects. Un grand merci avec le comité de programme aussi, qui a permis de construire avec nous le programme et de travailler sur les différents aspects. Et un grand merci aussi à tous les relecteurs qui permettent de maintenir une qualité scientifique d'excellence pour toutes les présentations que vous allez voir pendant cette semaine.
Thank you, Fred. A particular thanks to all of you. 630 people, roughly, from 37 countries, 60% French, 40% from the rest of the world, and a really nice spread. I think most importantly, again, at the heart of Novatech is this sharing between this coming together of different disciplines. So we have a spread across consultants, associations, local councils, municipalities, public administration, and then lots of researchers. And so I'd encourage you to make the most of the opportunity that you get to spend time meeting people that have a different perspective to you, that know different things to you, that see the world differently to you, and that's where you'll learn the most. So hopefully that's a great opportunity. Just to quickly outline the program, we're not going to do this in any detail. I'm assuming most of you know how to read. The program is there. You can see the structure of the program. We essentially have 4 themes. The theme around stormwater control measures is split into 2, one understanding and management, and the other around modelling and monitoring, but broadly 4 themes. So each session you choose which of the rooms you want to go to. The rooms are identified, so one room down here and then rooms up on the next level. And so you choose for each session.
On ne va pas détailler non plus les autres moments, mais c'est important de se rappeler que Novatech, ce n'est pas que les présentations. Novatech, c'est aussi beaucoup de moments qui sont des moments partagés, sur lesquels on peut discuter, on peut partager ensemble. Donc, on les a mis en valeur ici. Il y a les posters, il y a toutes les sessions posters sur lesquelles on va avoir le temps d'aller voir les posters et de discuter avec tout le monde. On a des prix pour les posters, on vous expliquera comment voter. On a la soirée de gala, qui va être un moment aussi important, et on a les visites du vendredi, et on a le mercredi les trophées. Bienvenue dans la famille, bienvenue à ceux qui sont déjà venus à Novatech et qui se connaissent et qui reviennent voir toute la famille. Mais la famille, c'est aussi une famille qui accueille les nouveaux. On a toujours beaucoup de nouveaux à Novatech, donc bienvenue dans la famille, mais accueillez aussi tous les nouveaux pour les intégrer dans la famille.
Donc on est vraiment ravis de vous accueillir tous aujourd'hui et on dit qu'à la fin de la plénière, Novatech est lancé. Je vous souhaite un bon Novatech.